of the people in power, whether red or blue. I could not care less about Texas, me and you. They created this give me country that don't value hard work. For a Texan to survive, all we need are some seeds and dirt. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country before it's long gone. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country before it's long gone. We believe in family and we value our community. Gladly lend a helping hand to a neighbor in need. And we don't believe that government should provide for all of society's needs. No, it's the pride of a Texan to give to others voluntarily. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Gotta save your country before it's long gone. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Gotta save your country before it's long gone. Our tax dollars, and they love our natural resources. They don't want to see us driving trucks, they'd rather see us riding horses. And now they want to ban our guns, you know, especially the ones that look scary. But may I remind you of the Gonzales Cannon and the Alamo heroes we buried. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save our country before it's long gone. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save our country before it's long gone. This last verse is straight from the Texas Constitution, Article 1, Section 1 and 2. Look it up. Texas is an independent state, yet presently we suffer. We no longer possess the right to locally self-govern. And now it's time as a people in which all political power is inherent. And in such manner we find expedient, we reform or abolish our government. I said, Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country before it's long gone. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country before it's long gone.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Late Night Coffee Talk, right? I've got my coffee, and as evident by the fact that you have already been sending me emails, you have questions, and so we will get to some of those answers here in a bit. Thank you guys for joining us. See, I know maybe last week there was some confusion for some people, but let me just clarify again, late night coffee talk, second and fourth Wednesdays of the month. We're going to do it twice a month, right? Gives time so we can get the podcast done, the Texas News podcast. So second and fourth. And this would be the second. So here I am, ready to answer your questions. And look, I appreciate all of you checking in last week. I really do. And I apologize for the confusion. You know, it just going from a weekly to every couple of weeks is I know a little disorienting for some folks. But very glad to be here with you guys. Yeah, and I'm seeing some of the comments in the chat. You thought it was every Wednesday night. Yeah, I mean, remember, I didn't do these. I did these like every week for the longest time, and then big break, right? Because we've just been so busy. And so it was a commit to come back in and say, look, we're putting this back on the calendar firmly every second and fourth Wednesday. And, you know, we may have to do some of these from on the road. It's possible because oddly enough, there are people already booking speaking engagements past the first of the year. It's crazy, right? Anyway, let's get down to it, right? So before we get moving, let's take care of a little bit of business. For those of you joining us for the first time, this is Late Night Coffee Talk. I'm Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist Movement, and this is the time where I take a break out of the very busy schedule. Grab yet another cup of coffee. And while I enjoy this coffee and a break away from whatever I'm doing, I fire it up and I answer your questions live. And so if you have questions, if you're watching on YouTube, first thing to do, right? Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. That way you don't have to wait for a notification email from us or, you know, any of that other. Just do that. You'll get notified. So like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you're on Facebook, you know what to do. All the Facebook things. Facebook's been around forever, so you know what to do. Be sure to like the post, comment on the post, and share it because that helps us defeat the algorithm and reach more people. And then, of course, X. You know, I made a mention of this 2 weeks ago that for the first time ever, our live streaming on X, aka Twitter, for those of you still stuck in the old ways, the live viewership on X was higher than it was on YouTube. So I got to tell you that may be sort of a go-to platform. As a matter of fact, many of you may have noticed that the most recent episode of the Texas News podcast was not only posted on, you know, all the normal Spotify, Apple Podcast, all that, and obviously the video version was on YouTube, but we went ahead and dropped the entire episode on X, right? The thing in its entirety. So if you're on any of those platforms, right, if you're watching there, if you're watching it and somehow not on there, I'm not sure how that works, but go figure, right? But if you're on any of those, if you have a question, you can leave it in the comments or the chat. Kara is in the room in there monitoring those things, and she'll make sure that they get right over here to the screen for me. But yeah, get your questions in there. We'll be looking for that. And of course, we also are taking them via email. Matter of fact, if you look here at the crawler on the bottom of the screen, email your questions to coffeetalk@thetnm.org, which some of you have already done, right? I'm already got quite a few on here. So it's going to be a great evening for Q&A, I do believe. So without further ado, let me just go ahead and say that right now, the live stream numbers on X are yet again 3 times higher than they are on YouTube. So I don't know what maybe YouTube is doing with notifying people. I'm not going to speculate. I will let your mind wander and kind of figure that out. Just kind of circle through that. Let that sink in a little bit. Ask yourself, why in the world would those YouTube numbers be lower? Who knows, right? Anyway, look, we've got a good one tonight. So tell you what I'm going to do. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these questions. And by the way, if you are on YouTube, this thing super chats like immediately pop up for me to answer. So they like go to the head of the class. However, YouTube takes a healthy cut of that. So if you are desirous to continue to help us continue moving forward the issue of Texas independence, just go over to donate.tnm.me and make a donation, right? That's the easiest way. We get that. Whereas if you do it on YouTube, those guys take like 30% right out of the gate. So just be aware. Okay. Here we go. This is Troy. Oh, Troy says, good evening, Daniel. Thank you for having the TEXIT book meeting in Greenville a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, Troy, and thanks for being there. And for those of you who don't know, it was a couple of weeks ago. The team and I were at the Texan Theater in Greenville doing a seminar called the TEXIT Blueprint, where I literally spent the day on the stage walking through sort of the prereqs for TEXIT and then walking through each of the 4 key stages of TEXIT, giving about 40 minutes to an hour for each one. So it was a pretty long day. And for those of you that endured it, and I got to tell you, the venue, beautiful venue, but right before we got there, the AC went out in the theater. And so for those of you who stayed and endured that heat and watching me pace back and forth on the stage while getting dehydrated, I thank you for that. And really for everyone who participated, I really, really hope you got some new insights into what the TEXIT process looks like. So thank you all for participating. And thanks for that nice comment, Troy. I do appreciate it. Okay. The Crunch Bite says, I want to hear Dr. Phil issue an apology for his insanity. You were not going to hear Dr. Phil issue an apology. And nor would I expect him to. Look, I understand why many of you are probably pretty upset. I covered this on not this most recent episode of the Texas News Podcast, but the one before. Look, he's just, Phil's just not there. For those of you who don't know, I was on a panel on the Dr. Phil show, Dr. Phil Primetime. It's posted all over the TNM News site, so go check it out. But the fact of the matter is that, and I'm not going to rehash everything I said in the podcast, but he's where he is. You got to remember this. And this was brought to my attention because oddly enough, because of everything that has been going on, I never put this together, but understand that his monologue at the end, right? His end cap monologue was already written, right? I mean, he didn't have the panel and listen to all of us, hearing all the different sides of this, and then, just kind of come up with it on the fly. It was already pre-scripted, it was a scripted monologue. It's TV, folks. That's what they do. And so, he had to deliver what was on the teleprompter. There was the way those productions work, they don't really get to call an audible, right? So honestly, we really don't know what sort of an impact that panel had on him. We know kind of what he went into thinking, and we know that he said that at the end of the show because it was pre-scripted. But who knows, right? The tail of the tape will be moving forward what his interaction with this issue is. And I think that will tell more than anything else. So I'll tell you, I'm not looking for an apology. He is entitled to his opinion like we are entitled to our opinion. The fact of the matter is we just don't know at this point what his opinion is because, as I said, the opinion that he espoused at the end of his episode was one that he held before he heard all the facts in the episode. So something to think about, but thanks for that. Okay. Let's tell you what, let's go to a question via email. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, this is a good one. Lou asks, he says, when Texas first separated from the federal government with the other southern states in the 1860s, The thought was that we don't need a new Declaration of Independence. We're already an independent state and are just acting accordingly. Do you think we should do the same or have a new Declaration of Independence? A Declaration of Independence is not necessary. It's a really good question, Lou, because there's actually one that kind of ties into it that I've read that came in a little bit later, but there are a lot of misconceptions about what this process looks like, right? And there are people out there that are that possess the idea that somehow we have to use some magic historical fairy dust to make this happen. For example, and I hear this a lot, Lou. I hear that people say that, well, you can't become independent if you don't issue a Declaration of Independence. Well, that's not true, right? You don't have to issue a Declaration of Independence. You could have what's called a UDI, which is a unilateral Declaration of Independence. It's essentially one where you say, look, we as a people are going to change our status, and it doesn't matter what happens, right? This is what we're doing. We're asserting our independence. And you will typically see that in what I would call, based on modern terminology, a true secession, okay? But let's look at what we're doing right here in Texas, okay? Point one. Article 1, Section 1 of the Texas Constitution states that Texas is a free and independent state. In fact, our Attorney General often goes to court to sue to preserve the sovereignty of the state of Texas, okay? So that's point one. Point two, if you look at Article 1, Section 2, it says that the people have at all times the inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish their government in such manner as they may think expedient. Okay, so if we're already free and independent, constitutionally it says so, and the people of Texas are the ones who make that decision, then I go to point three, which is the exact wording of the referendum. And those that participate in the TEXIT blueprint will understand why the wording of the referendum question is so stinking important. But if you think about the question that the Texas Independence Referendum Act puts to the people of Texas, it asks them this simple question: should the state of Texas reassert its status as an independent nation? Now, I think that a lot of folks sometimes don't understand why that particular aspect of it is important, okay? But essentially, what it does is it takes our existing status as a free and independent state, but as a member of the United States of America, as a political and economic institution, and says what we are going to do now is we're already this status. We're just going to reassert that status. We're going to step up and do it. Now, some people say, well, that's declaring independence. Well, sort of, right? What it's doing is it's reframing the relationship we have with the body in which our state is an entity, is a piece of, right? Is a member of. Now, I will tell you that a lot of the compulsion from people to state unequivocally that they believe that we must have a Declaration of Independence comes from nostalgia, from 1776, 1936, right? It's not grounded in any type of real sort of, legal understanding of our status. But number two is they just got a lot of grievances they want to get off their chest. If we were, think about, look at the Declaration of Independence of the colonies from Great Britain, right? You look at that document, it's a pretty concise list of grievances and why they need separation. Think about 1836 when Texans declared their independence from Mexico. Very concise list. If we were to write up a complete list of grievances that we have with the United States as a system right now, I don't know that there are enough trees in Texas to print that up, to generate the paper to print it up. They're just numerous. The good news is it's just not necessary for us to do that. We do not have to issue a unilateral Declaration of Independence. We could if we wanted to, but ultimately, I think the ultimate Declaration of Independence is the one when the people, by vote, say, we are now independent. this is where we want to go. We want to reassert our status as an independent nation. That is the ultimate declaration of independence. So, Lou, thank you for that question. That was a good one. All right, let's see what we got over here. Man, you guys are full of great questions tonight. All right. Okay, we'll take this one because this will be fun. James says, speaking of X, what's your take on all this posturing of UK entitled woke personalities threatening to extradite American citizens for hurtful speech online and the threat of arresting Elon Musk? I think I made my particular feelings on that known. I didn't really hear a lot of the leadership here in Texas speaking out about, the comments that were made by, the Metropolitan Police there in the UK. I did not hear a lot of our leaders here in Texas, our electeds especially, speaking out about the European Commission, essentially telling Elon Musk that they would take action on him if he held his interview with Donald Trump, and so I fired off letters in response, like, look, if they can send a letter, so can we, right? But I felt personally that the elected leadership here in Texas was not responding strongly enough to that, because let's just get down to brass tacks. It's not about what the content was. We're not trying to get up in the UK's business. We're not trying to get into the business that's happening in England or Great Britain or Scotland or Ireland. That's not what we're trying to do. But the moment that you have an official from a foreign entity threatening to reach their hand across the border of Texas and take retribution on somebody who's a resident or a company that is effectively headquartered here at this point, or threatening Texas citizens, well, now we've got a problem, right? Now there is a serious issue here, and honestly, I'm surprised that we did not have more of the elected leadership in Texas speaking up about this, because effectively you've got agents from a foreign government threatening Texas citizens for exercising their rights in their own homes, right? Their right of speech, right? Their freedom of speech. They have an opportunity, if they want to be like communist China and shut down the internet and start blocking websites like Iran or China, they have that option to do that. But what they don't want to have laid bare what really is in their hearts and minds. They would love to do that, but they're afraid of being outed. The communist Chinese, the Iranian regime, they don't care. They blatantly censor, right? But what they resorted to was threatening individuals to get them to self-censor, right? And I find this, frankly, not a lot different than what happened with Facebook, right? And what you saw in the Twitter files pre-Elon Musk purchase of Twitter, or what some of the rest of these big tech companies are doing. They don't want to directly censor you. They just want to make things so miserable for you in using these public squares. They want to make it so miserable that you'll just self-censor. You'll just shut up. Right. And look, there's a lot of things out there on social media that I don't agree with, but I don't think that if it's an opinion, right, if it's patently false, there are laws to cover that sort of thing, right? You can't say things that are just fake, right? You have slander laws, you have libel laws, you have things like that, and I would actually even say that those have become too weak. They've been weakened over time. But the answer is not for these government agents to go in and say, look, we're going to suppress your speech, and we're going to do it by proxy, because these social media platforms take money from us. They must censor speech that we don't like. That's state-controlled media. I mean, that's what it is. And so, I mean, this is a pretty deep rabbit hole we could go down. I mean, this is something we could probably have a hour or two forum on to talk about this. But to your point, James, the fact of the matter is someone had to say something. And I did. I said what I said. I sent it. I got some blowback from it, from the same cast of characters. I don't care. It doesn't bother me that they don't like what I said. The truth is that Texans will take care of Texans, right? And any foreign entity that wants to reach their hand in and try to slap our people around for exercising their rights, whether it's extraditing them to the UK, right, or threatening to shut down a business, run and or arrest a business owner here for just providing a space for the free exchange of ideas, they got another thing coming, right? They're not going to be able to make that happen here in Texas. And I would suggest that they don't even try. They just need to go put that in check. Forget that they ever said that, right? Just stow it away, because here in Texas, I think historically we've shown how we feel about tyranny and dictatorship, right? So, okay, let's get down to the next question. That's a good one, James. Thank you for that. Okay, here we go. Let's take one from email. Okay, this one, this is one that dovetails into one of the questions before. This from our good friend John Bolgiano there in Llano. He says, Daniel, during several conversations about Texas independence, the other party has raised the objection that a simple majority referendum is not sufficient and a state convention with a 2/3 majority is required. I have read the documents surrounding annexation to the Union and the Texas Constitution. I have been unable to find any reference to this requirement, and they have so far been unable to produce any document supporting this. Can you recommend a short, simple, and polite refutation to their claim? Yes. And here it is. And I know you guys keep getting the bump because I don't have my little mic thing here for me. I'm sorry about that. Here's the refutation. Anytime these guys make assertions like this, and I'm going to tell you, people come up with some of the craziest crap that they believe. And I mean, I don't know any other way to say it, right? Like, I've heard this, well, you got to have 2/3 agreement from the other states. Where is that written? Right? Or this one, well, a referendum won't do it. You got to have a convention. Where is that written? Well, it's got to have a 2/3 majority. Where does it say that? Where does it say that? Right? They assume somehow, and I don't know if they got it from like a bunch of Dollar Tree fortune cookies or where they got this stuff from, but they come up with these things where they say, they make up these things. It's like, look, I need you to cite this, okay? Because let's just remember how it works here. If you have a statewide issue that goes to a vote of the people, or even a local issue, they forget we have local referendums all the time. Property tax increases, bond elections. What is the majority? What is the threshold for those? 50% plus one. That's the threshold. That's the way it's always been. It's called first past the post, right? Majority wins. 50% plus one vote wins the election. That's the way that it is. I've actually talked about this at the TEXIT blueprint as well, right? I had an entire slide that I put up there on that big screen that said there is no supermajority requirement. When people say these things, they just make it up. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to run into a lot of people out there. Not a lot. You're going to run into a few that will tell you all of this weird stuff that they concoct, like this thing that you're talking about, John. And I'm going to tell you what it really is. It's an excuse to do nothing. That's what it is. It's an excuse to do nothing. 50% plus one is achievable. We believe if we put this on a ballot and it goes to a vote tomorrow, it wins, and it wins big. And we've got the numbers to back up that assertion. We have the argument to back up that assertion. But when people come up with this kind of flea flicker nonsense about, oh, well, it's got to be a convention. Look, and I understand that this is a point of divergence between myself and Brian McClanahan about the convention. He believes convention is necessary. I believe that Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution says that a convention is not necessary, and Article 1, Section 2 is clear. But he's not the one out here peddling this kind of other stuff. It's like, show me where it is written that this must be done. Because if I can show you where we're at and you make up some kind of nonsense and you can't show me where it's written that it must be this way to refute mine, then I win. And I'll tell you, it really gets down to the root of the issue, right? If you call it out and you say, show me the money, cite your sources, show me where it says that, show me the law. It's like when people say, well, Constitution says that you can't withdraw from the Union. Pull out a copy of the Constitution and show me. Well, it's against the law. Show me the law, right? The thing that you have to remember in debating this, and I'll be honest with you, I think that we're at a point where we shouldn't be debating people on the TEXIT issue. We should be spending our time going and finding our people that are already ready for TEXIT, regardless of all this other nonsense, right? But when you find yourself debating with someone about this, understand that the tack has been for them to what if it to death. They figure if they can bury you in questions the first time they hit you with one that you cannot answer, or that has an answer they don't like, it's a reason for them to basically flunk the whole thing, right? Throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I want you guys to understand something, is that it's perfectly acceptable for all of us to ask the same questions, right? I'll give you an example. Hang on. I'm going off book, folks. I hope you don't mind. Let's find this one. I'm going to go into my email because I had some interesting emails from some people this week. Like this one, I had an email. Someone sent an email about Social Security. Now they're a TNM supporter, right? And they said Texas has to be ready for all seniors in Texas on Social Security. TNM can jabber all it wants on how the rules state, but that is not what will be done. Everyone will be shut off. Well, it's like, really? I mean, is that, prove it? I mean, they predict doom and gloom. It's like, show. So my response was, fair play. Look, Texas has the ability to cover all federal pension benefits with the excess overpayment that would no longer be going to Washington, D.C. But why are you willing to hold us to a higher standard than you hold the federal government? How many times do they have to announce the imminent bankruptcy of the Social Security system before you believe them? Right? I mean, that's kind of the thing is, so I want you guys to really feel empowered to begin to ask your own questions. Look, if being in the union is all that in a bag of chips, make them prove that up. Right? Cool. You say that the $35 trillion worth of federal debt is not a sufficient reason to leave the United States. Well, tell me then, what is the answer to that? Right? How do you get rid of that? How do you get rid of that $35 trillion? And if you tell me that it's, well, we're just going to elect better people, then I'm going to tell you that you should probably you should probably lay off the street drugs. Okay. This pie in the sky thought process that these people have about how we're going to get out of this mess. It's okay. If they're going to pepper you with questions, you have the ability to pepper them back. Do not shrink back from their bad argumentation. Don't let them substitute sentimentality for rationality. Do not let them sell your future so they can feel better about themselves in the here and now. Okay? Good question. Thank you for that, John. I appreciate that. All right, let's get back over here. And let's see if we can pick another one up from chat. Okay. Okay, this is a good one. So Keith Erickson asks, he says, good evening, Daniel. What is your take on the Colorado and New Mexico secession movements which aim to join a future Republic of Texas? Look, I'll tell you, and I don't know particularly maybe what spurred this particular question, other than there is this desire from a lot of people for us to get the old borders of the Republic back, so we can get our ski resorts, right? But we did sell that property off, right? It was sold and we did get paid for it. So, we're not going to be able to claim that as such. But I think your question really kind of hones in on some of the additional discussion that's been going on as of late. Some of you may have seen the article that was posted on the website today that we were mentioned in, the Newsweek article that was based off of an op-ed that was posted on our site by Grant Dahl. But if you haven't read it, go to the news site, news.tnm.me. Phenomenal op-ed piece where he breaks down a lot of the different movements, and not all of the movements are, states withdrawing from the Union. He talked about the Greater Idaho movement. There are always these campaigns, I guess, to split states. But I think all of that combined speaks to a much larger issue, which is this desire for places to associate with one another. When you begin to look at making shifts in the map and the borders, well, suddenly a lot of things are on the table. And so, Texas withdraws from the Union. There's nothing to say that a piece of Colorado doesn't decide to leave Colorado or and become independent. That's a more difficult hurdle, and that's a whole conversation for another time. That's a whole different kind of discussion, and actually hits to the difference between withdrawal of a state from the Union versus secession. But that, again, we can talk about that some other time. But when you begin to discuss the idea of self-determination and self-government, you're going to have states, Texas is going to want to vote and it's going to want to bounce out. You're going to have situations like you have the Greater Idaho, where you have these Oregon counties. They say, look, we're not trying to leave the United States, but we are trying to leave this state, and we want to govern ourselves like they govern next door in Idaho, right? And we'd like to join Idaho. You're going to have states that agree at some point to say, you know what, there's a big difference between the people in the eastern part of the state and the western part of the state, or the northern part of the state and the southern part of the state. That's going to happen. Those conversations are going to happen. Now, from a geopolitical perspective, I can't tell you how those are going to end up, right? That's, again, not a lot of my business. But the fact that people are beginning to earnestly and sincerely have these conversations speaks to the much larger issue that self-determination isn't just a major issue. It is the most major issue. It's top of the heap, because everything else flows down from that self-determination and self-government issue. And I wish I had an hour to lecture on that one, but that ain't going to be tonight. But anyway, Keith, thank you for that. Man, you guys have great questions tonight. I'm really excited. Okay. Okay, this is from Steven. Steven says, I know that this question will be determined by future legislation, but what kind of cutoff do you foresee to determine Texas citizenship? I closed on my house on June 18th and moved in on June 21st. I moved here from out of state. It seems to me like you're moving here with the anticipation that we're going to be out of here, and you're going to be like an awful lot of people that are moving here to Texas. There are a lot of people relocating to Texas because they anticipate that Texas will become a self-governing independent nation. So first and foremost, welcome, right? And you're in the right place with us. But all I'll say is this: I can't tell you what that ultimately will look like in relation to the cutoff for Texas citizenship. You know, you're talking about a process farther down the road than before the vote, right? The laws are going to be the laws until the laws change. You guys will hear me say that a lot. I even think I talk about it in the book. Things are as they are until those things change. Okay, so Texas will have to further in the process establish what is citizenship, and I will tell you that will be wrapped up in a larger conversation in the negotiation excuse me, related to the status of Texans living in the United States and citizens of the United States that are living in Texas. That's going to be part of that conversation. It's not going to be the central part of that conversation. There are really two issues that are going to be linked in some way. But basically what's going to happen is that discussion is going to have to be held concurrently. The negotiation over Texans in the U.S. and U.S. citizens in Texas and what Texas citizenship is. And that will be determined by the legislature. I could give you a spectrum of possibilities of what that might look like, some more probable than others. But in reality, I think that the people of Texas are going to have the lion's share of the say. And so I would hate to get in here and say, well, this is the way it's going to be. I'm never going to do that because it's not up to me alone. Just like Governor Abbott or Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick or your state representative or state senator, when it gets down to the day to vote, we all get one vote on our independence. But all of us that go vote for our independence get a massive, massive say in what happens on the other side of that. And for the first time ever, we'll get to have substantive discussions about real issues that affect Texas. And I'm very excited about that. So thank you for that question, Stephen. I think I know who this is. I think this is Graham. This is from the English Constitution Party. It says, in light of the British communist oppression of the English, will Texas sympathetically accept political asylum applications from the English? I got to tell you, given some of the East German style crackdowns over there, I think there is a tremendous amount of sympathy for what's happening over there. There is something about, I think, mass reprisals people going to jail for posting on social media. We've always said people should be responsible. They should post responsibly. But an opinion is an opinion. And if you're getting jailed for your opinions, that's a totalitarian regime, right? And it's not very far from, what's happening over there right now to just absolute thought police. I mean, at what point are they going to send in the troops to crack down on all political dissent? All of it. If you don't agree with the party line, well, I mean, that's Orwell in 1984. So honestly, I think this might be Graham asking if he can come hang out in our spare bedroom. I think that may be what that is. So anyway, I think this is from you, Graham, but thank you for sending that in, buddy. I appreciate that. Okay. Wow, man, we are blowing through them. Hey, a reminder real quick. I mean, we're a little past the midway point, but if you still have questions, be sure to post them over in the chat or drop them right there to coffeetalk@thetnm.org. And while you're doing it, if you have an opportunity, please be sure to head over and make a donation. Go to donate.tnm.me. Okay. Boom. Here's a good one. John says, hi, Daniel. After TEXIT, does it take effect right away, or do we have to wait for the legal paperwork to be sent to Washington? Okay. This question is one of the reasons that I did that we did the seminar, the TEXIT Blueprint, because there is, I wonder if I can pull up. I'm going to try to pull up this one slide for you guys from the presentation. We videoed the whole thing, by the way, but we are taking it on the road. So get ready. If you see the TEXIT Blueprint coming to your town, you're going to want to be a part of it. But here's what I'm going to do. I am going to take these two just really quickly. I wish I had them here on this computer. I don't, but I will get them. I promise. 6. Sorry, guys. I'm working on it. I could have just shared this thing on the screen, I guess. Okay. Yeah, there we go. All right. I'll be able to show them to you here in just a second. But I'm gonna get spoilers because this comes in the first section of this thing, of the presentation. But I'm gonna give you these two slides real quick just so you can get a sense, because it's going to really help me answer this question for you. Apologies for the hold up. I did not anticipate doing this tonight, so let's just take it here and this one here. There we go. All right, John, just really quickly, I'm going to remove your comment and I'm going to answer it. But this is it. So part of the challenge that people have with the TEXIT issue is they think they know what it is, but they really don't know, right? And so, because this is something that I talk about a lot, is that if we can't agree on a definition, we can't have real conversations, right? You can't, one of the first things you learn in competitive debate, at least I did when I was at college, was that before you begin a debate, regardless of what it is, you got to define the terms, right? You got to set the terms and set the definitions, because if you can't agree on the meanings of words, then you guys are just dancing around each other, right? It's just a show. And we know that because we know the opposition loves to change the definition of words. If you can muddy the language and make it so that we can't agree on these things, you can manipulate people, right? So the thing to understand about TEXIT, you will hear me say often that TEXIT is not an act, right? It's a process. And this is the key part, right? So what people think TEXIT is they think it's Texas plus exit, and that's TEXIT. And true, that is where the term comes from. It makes for a good slogan, right? It makes a lot of sense. TEXIT, it's an easy thing. You get a picture of Texas exiting the union when you hear that word. But the challenge is that word is not definite enough, right? It doesn't have a concrete enough definition. So you have people who think that that TEXIT is independence. And some of you have maybe heard me say this before, is that TEXIT is not independence. It's what gets us to independence, right? TEXIT is a process. Well, let me just show you what that looks like. This is what TEXIT really is, right? Over here on the left, you've got the people of Texas. And over on the right, you've got where we want to go, which is political, cultural, economic independence, right? We want to be independent, self-governing. And TEXIT is that stuff in the middle, right? Anything that gets us from where we are to where we need to go, right? Gets us through this process to becoming independent. That is TEXIT. So that's why so many times you hear me say that, if you think TEXIT can't happen, you're not paying attention. It's happening right now. Any of that process that's moving us toward becoming politically, culturally, economically independent and self-governing, that is TEXIT. Okay. So we say TEXIT now. TEXIT now is not like a demand from us. It's like TEXIT now, right? It's happening. So I say that because, to go back to John's question, after TEXIT, does it take effect right away, or do we have to wait for the legal paperwork to be sent to Washington? What you're asking is really a process question, right? So the only thing after TEXIT is literally full independence, right? Anything before that is moving us toward independence is TEXIT. So what you're talking about here is, I think, is does the vote take effect right away? And the answer is the vote takes effect right away because it's an expression of the political will of the people of Texas. But that the vote coming back in the affirmative does not mean we are immediately independent, right? Because there's a lot of work to do. You guys have heard me say this before. The 4 key things that we have to deal with after an affirmative TEXIT vote: constitutional issues, statutory issues, international covenants, treaties, and agreements, and finally the negotiated issues. And some of those will happen simultaneously. They don't necessarily have to happen in that order. That's the best order for them to happen in. But I will say this: the Texas Independence Referendum Act calls for the results of the vote to be officially and formally transmitted to the United States federal government, to the president and to Congress. So, they're notified, but understand this is not a mother may I situation. This is the people of Texas will speak on this issue, and that will be the last word on the issue. This is not the people of Texas speak, and then we go and we ask, we go beg for scraps from the master's table from Washington, D.C. Please, sir, may I have my independence? No, the people of Texas have spoken. And some people say, well, you can't do that without the federal government's permission. And I say, well, let me tell you something. Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution begs to differ when it says that all political power is inherent in the people. And it said that the people have at all times the inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish their government in such manner as they may think expedient, right? There's not a mother may I in there. It's not in such manner as the federal government may think expedient. They don't get a say in it. The only people that get a say in Texas independence are the Texan people. That's it. No one else. What we say goes. So go through the process, and I'm not going to give you the whole TEXIT blueprint presentation because none of you are going to sit here for the next 8 hours, I guarantee. But the point here is, to your question, John, the vote is effectively politically binding because it is an expression of the political will of the people of Texas. And then we begin to act on that. And we don't have to, there's no legal paperwork for us to send to Washington, D.C., right? There's no notice and demand, right? We don't have to go, there's none of that. We start moving through that process toward the ultimate goal, which is this right here: to be politically, culturally, and economically independent and self-governing. So that's the way the cookie crumbles, my friend. And I really hope that answered your question. I think it did more than answer your question. I think I over-delivered on that one, but hopefully you guys didn't mind it so much. All right. Let's see where we are. We got 10 minutes left. Okay, let me check over here in the email. Yes, indeed, that was Graham, by the way. So Graham, still owe you some barbecue, buddy, when you come back. Okay, rolling through these. Man, you guys are hitting me with a lot of them tonight. Okay, let's take a look here. I'm seeing a bunch of hearts and things on here, and hopefully that you guys were not upset that I over-delivered on that one. So, okay, let's get down to, okay, here we go. James has asked another one. James, normally I tell people, sorry, limit one per customer, right? But I'll let you sneak this one in because it gives me an opportunity really quickly to point to something on the website. He says, how many other states are looking at secession now and looking to Texas for success or failure? I would suggest going and taking a look at the most recent article on the TNM website. It was the link to, it's from that Newsweek article. There was an article, I think, in the Daily Mail recently If you go to in the news section or in the media section on our website, you'll see all the media mentions. By the way, guys, I think we're like, for the year so far, I think we're like over 170 to 180 separate articles about our work in major publications. I'm not talking about, Joe Bob's Facebook page, right? I'm talking about, major articles, news, and this is TV, radio, print, but mostly what we've accumulated is print. And so far, that's, I think, close to 170, 180, somewhere in the ballpark. That's pretty astounding. I got to tell you, for the longest time, being muzzled was just was tough. But now the media understands that we're doing something great here. Okay. Or at least something interesting. I don't know that some of those guys would classify it as great, but they at least think it's interesting. Okay, this is going to be probably my final question. D. Eubank says, would Texas recall their Texas residents in the military back home when TEXIT is implemented? Similar answer to what I said a moment ago. As far as this process goes, you're going to have Texans that are in the United States military, and those people will be on contract, right? So, couple of things to bear in mind. Part of the negotiation in a separation would be the disposition of federal military bases in Texas, federal military personnel in Texas, and Texans in federal military service that are still under contract. So that will be a part of the negotiation, because, again, those contracts are not between Texas and the United States. Those contracts are between the individuals from Texas and the United States military. And so remember, these things want stability, right? When you have these types of separations, only a crazy person wants to pursue it in such a way that it just destabilizes everything. So imagine that will be part of the negotiated issues, that discussion. But ultimately, I think something that you have to think about in that negotiated process is whether or not the U.S. federal government will want Texans in the military. There have been times in the past, and I know because I've talked to multiple members of the military over that have experienced this. There have been times when the Texans have been taken, Texans in units have been put in a room and said, hey, we need you to fill out this questionnaire, or we need you to sign this piece of paper, essentially saying that they would stay in federal military service if Texas left, or trying to discern what their sentiments are about Texas leaving. It seems they are typically very specific with the Texans, but I've talked to multiple people in the military that this has happened to, who have served over different periods of time. Once was in the mid to late 90s. Once was right around, say, 2000 to 2002. Again around 2009, and then again around 2012. So, excuse me. I know that this has happened because it's from different people, different sources, different stories that are definitely military. So, from our perspective, there's a lot of things that Texans will probably want to do in that regard. Pragmatically speaking, you're probably going to wind up with a very limited mutual defense compact between Texas and the United States military. So I think I even talk about it in the book, where you could potentially see the military bases turned over to the Texas Military Department, administered by the Texas Military Department, but continue with a limited federal presence at those bases. So for joint defense concerns, right? That is, from a practical standpoint, more likely than not what would happen. I can't say that for a fact. Texans may say, nope, we don't want that. The federal government may say, nope, we don't want that. But international law and precedent basically says at the moment that we have our vote, and we secure our independence, or we officially say that this is the way it is, then that stuff belongs to us anyway. And if you don't believe me, for those of you out there, federal boot-licking progressives or whoever you are that are probably trolling me on Twitter right now, if you don't believe me, go look at the article that was written by Newsweek where they interviewed experts on this issue and said that, at the moment that happened, NASA would belong to us. You guys have, what are you going to do without NASA? You won't have it. Well, Johnson Space Center will belong to us. So, figure that one out, right? All right. Well, my friends, there were a ton of great questions. I just saw this here. I'll throw that up there because I happened to look. Katie says, there are many great questions in chat tonight. That is the absolute truth. My, oh my, oh my. Well, folks, someone up here put there are 12 states having secession movements. There's more than 12. But just so you know, that's what they put in the Newsweek article. And I had some banter with the reporter today. It's like they're not all in there, right? So anyway, all right. Well, folks, we're going to start moving and grooving, wrapping this thing. Just a reminder, look, if you have not already pledged your support to the TNM, if tonight is your first night finding out about this, look, we want you to be one of us. We want you to help make Texas a self-governing independent nation. Head over to tnm.me/vote and register your support today. And of course, if you look down there at the bottom, tnm.me/join to become a member, or tnm.me/donate. You got to help us keep the lights on, folks. We've got to keep pushing forward. Look, we are winning. We are winning. We are winning. I mean, you cannot just imagine if you were here 10 years ago, you just can't imagine how much we've gotten done and how close we are to getting this across the finish line. We just need your help. We need you to register your support and get involved, get in the game. Okay. Additionally, look, if you are already a registered supporter and you have not downloaded the TNM mobile app, do so right now. Go to tnm.me/app, and their links are there for the mobile app for both iPhone and Android. Get it installed. You'll have to have a login, so be sure that you're already a registered supporter. And then, look, we have been teasing this coming for months because we've been trying to get as many of our TNM supporters, businesses registered as possible. We are nearing the end of the sort of pre-sign-up phase, but we are indeed launching a TNM business directory. Look, this is how we win, right? We do business with one another. We work with one another. And so we are, I guess second week of August. We're looking at a beginning of September official launch of the TNM business directory. So if you have a business, if you're a business owner, it doesn't matter. Small, medium, large business does not matter. If you're a business owner, head over to business.tnm.me and register your business, and we'll be in contact with you as we get closer to the launch. But we're going to encourage our folks to do business with people that want to do business with them. There are too many businesses out there that will take our money and use it to hurt us. And that's not what we're about. We're going to support one another, and we're going to do that through the TNM business directory. All right. Well, my friends, I do believe that is going to be a wrap for tonight. I want to thank you guys so much for being here for Late Night Coffee Talk. Second and fourth Wednesdays of every single month is when we're going to be doing these. So be looking for it. You will see me in 2 weeks, and we're going to get your questions in. Look, you can also send your questions in now, right? You don't have to wait till the night of. You can do that at the email that you see scrolling at the bottom. It'll be back in a second. It's coffeetalk@thetnm.org. But go ahead and get those questions in. We had some phenomenal ones tonight, guys. You knocked it out of the park tonight. These were questions that I absolutely loved. So thank you guys so much. In the meantime, here's what I'd like for you to do. Be sure to like us on all the things, subscribe, hit the notification bell, go become a member if you haven't done it. Help us keep doing things like this. But more importantly, be sure you introduce TEXIT and the hope that TEXIT brings to your friends, your family, your neighbors, as many people as you can. Between now and the next time I see you in 2 weeks, let's pile these folks on, right? Let's let people know that we don't have to be subjected to the kind of nonsense that we're dealing with, the doom and gloom, that there is hope. And that hope is for Texans to stand together and stand up and make Texas an independent nation again. And so with that, my friends, I will end this as I end all of these, right? Not with my words, but the words of Sam Houston when he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. I believe that time is now. And the question is, will you stand with her? Good night, everyone.